from 12 to 1 p.m. EST. And on Fridays from last week, we have kickstarted the LetUsTalkIT youth webinars, which would be very exciting for youth and for adults, because we tend to learn from each other pretty well, the youths who are facing a lot of new situations and how they are dealing with that. So that also happens on Fridays from 12 to 1. And we are extremely happy that you could join us today. This is absolutely a knowledge sharing platform. So we, all those who have joined us on Facebook, YouTube, and other LinkedIn and all the social medias, we welcome you to this session, and we hope that you spread the word, you let others know of this sincere our efforts to share knowledge among the community. And we hope that you interact with the speaker, or if you have any questions, please do comment on the social media channels. You can comment on the comment section and we'll get your questions answered as well from the speaker. And all those who have joined in our Zoom link, please share your questions or whatever you have during the session in the chat box. And at the end, we will definitely have a question answer session. And to start with, we have this exciting topic, which is just roaring and trending all over the place nowadays. So it is the RPA, the Robotic Process Automation Revolution. And so our topic for today is the revolution and how to make it work for you. And as per Gartner, RPA is the fastest growing market in the enterprise software category. We all know that COVID has mandated digital transformation for most global enterprises, and RPA is one of the easiest and quickest ways to automate and transform. And our speaker today would share his RPA stories and prepare you for a journey to make the most of this revolutionary technology. And to introduce our speaker today, he is Saurav Goenka, the co-founder and CEO at Heatmap Digital. He is a chartered accountant and a digital transformation professional with more than a decade's experience in process automation, process improvement, digital transformation, and strategy leadership. Saurav has also created a very large digital skilling academy in the form of Heatmap Learning, and is working on an edtech platform to give access to world-class, affordable, and job-oriented digital skilling ecosystem to at least 1 million users by the year 2022. So seeing his profile, we have to say that he is a person who looks to the future. And asking him what is he's passionate about, he said it is about philosophical thoughts. So if this combination of technology and philosophical thoughts is definitely a quality which very few people have, and we are so glad to have you, Saurav. Over to you.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you so much for that rather lofty introduction of mine. And thank you so much for, first of all, I wanted to congratulate you guys for creating a wonderful platform, which is really in the right spirit of sharing information. So let me kind of quickly get started. The way we want to structure this webinar is, we'll cover 4 different things. First of all, I want to set the context of why is it that we talk so much about digital transformation, right? While we'll talk about RPA, why is it that we really need to focus so much on automation technology? So we'll talk a little bit about all of these buzzwords like digital transformation, Industry 4.0, and why do we need rapid automation? Then we're going to delve right into RPA, and I'm going to show you a real bot in terms of what does a real RPA bot looks like. And this is where I'm going to address most of the nuts and bolts for you to basically understand that what RPA is, how does it work. Then we're going to get into use cases. What are some of the easy and good quick win use cases? And I think a lot of you, thanks for sharing your introductions prior to just getting started. I know some of us here are looking at understanding how do we get started in RPA, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, I'm going to leave you with my credentials. And throughout this whole process, guys, whatever questions you have, please feel free to put those questions in the Q&A. I'll either address those questions as we go through whatever questions are relevant for a particular section, or let's make it really interactive towards the end. Okay. So very quickly, just setting the context, I always like to begin with this statement which says, and Julian, again, a little bit of philosophy and technology combined here. The world is changing, and intelligence is leading that change. Now, if you look at the history of the world, it's not possible for the world to not change, and it's always changed. But what's really different, and we're going to look at that timeline in just about 30 seconds from now, is that the pace of that technological change is absolutely massive. The amount of new information, new technology which gets created today in a span of, say, 6 months or 12 months is something which maybe 25 years back, it would have taken a whole decade to create that, right? So if we create a simple plot of the world's timeline from the 1400s to projecting into 2050s, this is a curve which would be the pace of that technological change. So from between the 1400s to the 1900s, you've had a rather linear, flattish kind of a growth, but 1900 onwards, it's been a very, very steep curve, right? Now, you all have heard about this thing called industrial revolution, right? So there were typically 4 of them. Right now, we're in the whole industry 4.0 phase, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it as well. But essentially, if you look at the whole period between 1400s and 1750s, you basically had 3 game-changer inventions: the printing press, the telescope, and the steam engine. So it took about 350 years to go from the printing press to the steam engine. But here's my philosophical question for you. Now, once the steam engine was invented, did you still have people riding horses to go from point A to point B? The answer is no. Once the change is there, it's out there to adapt and transform to, and there's no stopping that. Similarly, over the period of the next 100 years, you had the light bulb and the telephone, and once you had electricity, you never used to light candles in chandeliers, unless some of the really fancy hotels who still do that. But similarly, moving ahead for the next 100 or 50 odd years, you had the car, the television, the PCs, and then in less than 50 years, really, once you had the mobile phones and the computers, things started going on really, really sharply fast. And today you have the whole era where data is the new oil. Earlier, you had the manufacturing giants and the automobile giants as the largest companies in the world. Today, the largest companies in the world are Facebook, Google, Microsoft, some of these guys who are all technology companies. And you live in a world of technology like artificial intelligence, robotics, process automation, analytics, driverless cars, and the world is headed towards singularity, where people are trying to put guesstimates on, when would you see the scenario where a machine is as smart as a human, right? And this entire ecosystem, which really is a digital era, which has kind of sprung up in no less than 20 years, this whole ecosystem of modern digital technologies, this is what is known as Industry 4.0. And what we're going to do now is the reason we're going through this is I want to set context of what people are really thinking now and why did a technology like RPA take birth in the first place. So let's expand this timeline a little bit and make it more relevant to our time window. So if you look at 1900s to 2050, and we look at how business has evolved globally, how has the business processes evolved, there are primarily 2 drivers always for business to evolve: lower cost and better efficiency, right? So in the whole 1900s and between 1900 and 1950, people were kind of focused on core operations, where the manufacturers wanted to find out what is the best technology to manufacture. The other tech companies just focus on processes. Once these processes were set, came the whole era of IT transformation and IT management, where companies realized that, we're far too unstructured. The world is getting globalized. We got to put in all these IT systems into place. We got to have our ERPs and, all that stuff. And once they had that, they realized, this is not enough. It's still not helping me save costs. So, advanced economies like the US and some of the other economies said that, hey, what if I get the same process executed from some other economies like India, Philippines, South Africa, etc., at a lower cost? And That's where you had the birth of business process management and outsourcing. And as you're kind of moving up this radar, you're hitting lower cost as well as better efficiency. Now, very recently, what has happened is the world still needs more change. So it's still not enough for organizations to offshore a part of their work and live with it. They want more efficiency, higher efficiency, lower cost. And that's where you have all of this technology coming in. If you have an AI, if you have a bot which can work exactly like a human in terms of processing transactions, so on and so forth, then that whole thing is known as automated, cognitive, and intelligent process-based operating mechanism, right? And that's where we are at right now, where companies and organizations are saying, and especially, Julian, as you rightly brought up the whole COVID-19 reference, that it's really put digital on steroids, right? And all the customers are like, hey, you know what? We got to figure out, we got to move light years ahead. Digital transformation has taken a real bump, and there are lots of different technologies here fueling it. You have machine learning, artificial intelligence, blockchain, IoT, augmented reality, virtual reality, and then of course you also have RPA. But we're going to specifically talk about RPA. I wanted to give you this context so that you understand that where is this need coming from, right? It's a need fueled by businesses to operate in an automated way for the sake of lower cost and better efficiency, right? So the need of the hour is rapid, scalable, cost-effective business transformations. These are three really important parameters, right? Rapid, because you want this transformation to not take about a year's time or 2 years' time. I think some of us here who belong to the IT background, we will remember in the whole era where organizations started deploying the SAPs and the ERP systems. It's a huge decision of which system to go with. Then you got to build data centers, you got to migrate server farms and all that stuff. It used to take millions of dollars and so many hours and months of investment. But that has changed now. With the whole pace of technological change, CEOs, CIOs, and CFOs cannot invest 18 months on transformation. It needs to be rapid. Second, it needs to be scalable. It needs to be modular, where you put in a block of automation somewhere, you should be able to scale it up. And of course, it needs to be cost effective. Now, if you put all of these functions, and if you again weigh out all of these different technologies of machine learning, AI, blockchain, IoT, analytics, etc., RPA kind of emerges the strongest, because RPA implementations can happen in as less as 3 months. We've done lots of implementations in just 8 to 10 weeks. They are really scalable because they're modular. An RPA soft, an RPA tool. So there are various RPA tools. I'm going to talk about them. Would you believe me if I told you that you could just go on a website, download a 50 megabyte executable file, and install the RPA tool on your system? No frills, and you can kind of get started with automation. That's how fast is it, right? It is, right? And in terms of cost effectiveness as well, it is also one of the most cost effective solutions out there, right? All right, so say hi to RPA, a technology which really simplifies and enables automation using predefined templates, workflows, and rules, right? So again, for some of the guys here who are contemplating that, hey, how does RPA work? Will I really be able to pick it up? The most beautiful thing about RPA is that you don't really need to be a technology guy to pick it up. It's templatized automation, right? It is based on user interface manipulation, and you can create workflows and all of that. It's really intuitive and user-friendly, right? The learning curve is not that steep. The learning curve is really fast, and hence it is considered as one of the easiest, quickest, and most cost-effective technologies to automate business processes with ease. So now what I want to do first is I want to show you that what does an RPA bot look like. And there's one of these really good RPA tools out there called UiPath. And I'm going to show you an example of how an RPA bot in real time automates various different applications at the same time, okay? So I'm going to share this video first, and then I'm going to talk about it a little later. So here we go.
In the next example, our robot will work with 7 applications at once. Excel, Word, PDF, email, SAP, terminals, and Salesforce. The Excel file contains the name, email, SAP number, and an individual code for each person. The robot will first read this data, then open the terminal, input each person's code, and get all the data from the terminal. The emails from the CSV will be input into Salesforce to find every employee, and then the expense data from the terminal will be added into the expense row. After this, the robot will create a Word document from a template with a status report for each person. The Word file will then be converted to PDF and sent as an email attachment. Finally, the robot will find the employee's position in SAP and with all of the above data will populate the Excel file used in the beginning. Now, let's start the robot and explain the process in more detail. The robot will start by opening the terminal, Salesforce and SAP, and by logging into all three systems, preparing all the applications it will work with. It will browse the pages of the terminal and find the ID of the first employee. Then identify the same person in Salesforce based on their email address. The expenses are then added in Expense IT, the Word template filled in, converted to PDF, and sent as an email attachment. The robot then finds the position of the person in SAP, then moves on to the second person, looking for the ID in the terminal. After collecting the data, the robot sees that Salesforce does not display an account for Joan, so it creates one. After doing this, it fills the expenses on Joan's account, creates the Word document, converts it to PDF, and sends it as an email attachment. Then the robot moves on to the third person, and so on. Fast forwarding, we can see that all the data is completed in the Excel file for each person, and the emails for each person are sent with a PDF attachment.
All right, so that was a very quick look at how a bot really functions. So now that you've seen this video, I'm going to talk about 2 or 3 interesting facts here. First, now I'm sure as you're seeing this, you can imagine that there are lots and lots of repeated mundane tasks which are rule-based and which are taken care of in a very manual way in almost all businesses today. Think of cases where you're doing data entry, where you're uploading stuff into multiple places, or even for finance and accounting, if you're doing accounts payable, invoice processing, there are lots and lots and lots and lots of use cases. Whatever a human being does, which is rule-based, all of that can be automated using an RPA tool. So in this case, the RPA tool was used. The tool was called UIPath. And here's the interesting bit. What if I told you that this whole schematics of automation can get created in 3 or 4 business days? And that I'm not exaggerating. Now, then imagine the speed at which businesses can really transform, right? And that's the part, and that's basically what an RPA tool can do. It can automate stuff which lies within the confines of your screen, which is desktop automation. It can scrape data from the web. It can work with web applications. There's no limit. In fact, earlier when RPA came out, it was mostly a rule-based thing, but right now we have a lot of artificial intelligence-based RPA tools as well. I know somebody who's joined the session today. You work with automation anywhere. So if you do that, you're already aware of IQBot, which is their AI-based platform for automatically identifying information and working through flows and all that, right? So I just wanted to give you an overview and a good feeler of what does RPA really look like before we get into the nuts and bolts of it. So now I'm going to spend about 10 minutes in slowing it down, helping you understand what the tool, what RPA really is. So, just like there was an era where manufacturing got automated using machines, RPA bots are kind of revolutionizing the way we think about and administer business processes. So it makes you automate current tasks as if a real person was doing it, right? So an RPA tool can be seen as a virtual worker. In fact, right now, most organizations are creating their COEs, and when they do their resource planning, there's a whole COE set up for RPA, which evaluates and tells them that, look, you know what, we're not looking at a straight through workforce anymore. We're looking at a hybrid workforce where, well, of course, you're not going to have the creepy humanoid bot sitting and doing stuff. That's not what RPA is. But these are software bots, and they actually have login IDs just like an employee, and they pretty much go ahead and do stuff as a human user would do it. Now, this doesn't need any complex system integration. You don't really need complicated implementations, as I said. It's a plug and play. You can install the software, get started with it, right? This is debunking some of the common myths which exist about RPA. First of all, these are virtual bots. These are not physical robots. So, forget your end of the world scenarios. Don't get creeped out. Yeah, and it's not really only for high volume operations. A lot of people think that, hey, you know what, if I don't have 1 million transactions going through, RPA is not for me. That's not true. We've had cases where, for example, consider the use case where the cost of a mistake is really high. Let's say regulatory compliance filing. Let's say if you're a large US bank and if you're filing your compliance reports for stress testing to the Fed or any such similar requirements, and the cost of a mistake is really high, that is where you don't want to depend on humans, but you can let bots take over. Similarly for high value transactions, also RPA is a really good win. RPA is not a real large IT systems integration project. From a system architecture perspective, you don't need to do a whole lot. It can be small and nimble. Again, it does not really replace humans, guys. There are two different types of automations here. Let me talk briefly about them. There's something called an attended bot, and there's something called an unattended bot, right? So an attended bot is something which works with humans, and it kind of takes care of all the repeatable, mundane tasks, and the human can take the decisions on the way. But now we're also moving very heavily into the era of unattended bots, and most of the organizations who I'm currently working with, I think more than 85 to 90% of the implementations are with unattended bots, which are designed to take on the entire work for an FTE. But there's a big change management which takes place here. We got to do away with the whole fear factor. It's not going to really downsize people, but it makes sure that people are really well utilized. It increases the possibilities of performing value-added work. And this, guys, is the key. RPA can self-fund itself in as less as 3 months. We've seen lots of examples where 2 to 3 months is what it takes to get your ROI out, right? So now that you've kind of understood that, what does it look like and what it really is, your first question in your mind is, what processes should I automate? How do I identify some of those things which can be automated? So here's a quick map for that. First, processes which are highly manual and repetitive, go for it, because you just need to create the rules and it's going to take care of it. A bot works much faster than a human, so the average handling times are much lower, the productivity is really high. Second, cases which are rule-based processes, your easy wins. Processes with a low exception rate. Now, you don't want to be picking up processes where it has a very high number of exceptions and it doesn't go for straight through processing. There are lots of multiple divergent scenarios which may come up. Those cases are not very good for RPA, even though we're really getting there where AI-based RPA can take care of them. Processes with standard readable electronic input type. Now, one of the big use cases of RPA is where you take up documents, you capture fields from those documents, you put information across various applications and you take it forward. So, that's what we mean by standard readable electronic input type. Documents where the text is kind of readable. So I'm sure all of you will be familiar with the OCR technology. So OCR technology for RPA to function typically warrants you to have, I think, 300 dpi as a resolution for your scanned images. So before you do any document-based RPA, make sure your documents are not handwritten, they are machine readable. Of course, cases with high volumes are really good. Do not pick up processes with changeable processing method. And when you want to showcase benefit, always showcase benefit in terms of FTE savings. FTEs, for guys who are not familiar with the terminology, are full-time employees or full-time efforts. So you have to estimate that, hey, if I do this, how much time does it really save in terms of FTEs? And, please pick up matured and stable processes. I don't recommend organizations who are in the middle of system process change or your core ERP change to go with RPA, because you're going to have to reinvent the wheel at a later point of time. So this is a quick guide of what processes should you automate now, which tools can you work with, and there are lots and lots of tools out there. This is the latest ranking from HFS, one of my favorite analysts. And basically the top 3 tools are UiPath, Automation Anywhere, and Blue Prism, right? And out of these three, UiPath and Automation Anywhere, are the ones which are kind of doing really well, and they are much easier and faster to implement. And then you have lots of other tools which are out there. I'm going to share a copy of this presentation with guys who are interested. I'm going to give you a link to a form. If you fill that up, I'm going to share a copy of this with you. If you want to get started with RPA, please pick up one of these two. Both of these have online academies where you can sign up for free. There are a few certifications, you can do them for free. And then there are some paid certifications as well, but the online learning ecosystem is fantastic. You can go and start practicing. And of course, you can always reach out to me later for support with your projects or anything else. But basically, these are the various RPA tools which are out there. Now, how do you plan an RPA deployment, right? What are the key steps to plan an RPA deployment? The first step is to identify your business processes, right? So what is my broad process in which I want to implement RPA? Within my broad process, I don't want to automate everything, right? So I want to select those cases where I feel there is a positive ROI, where I feel that if I invest in my time and my money in buying licenses and doing deployment, it's going to give me some benefit. So you select those processes from your top high-level business process, and then you evaluate the RPA impact and the cross-functional impact on various upstream applications, downstream applications, so on and so forth. And once you've done that, you create something which is known as a process design document, which is a keystroke level map of how the process is currently run. And you create an as-is process flow, and you create a to-be process flow, right? And then you create your test scripts and test plan, and you roll it out. In terms of how much time does it usually take to do your RPA deployment from start to end? Now, for organizations, they either have already identified which technology RPA vendor they want to work with, or they haven't. If they've already identified this entire process can be as short as 2 months, or even 6 to 8 weeks. It typically takes about 2 weeks in the entire identify, select, evaluate, and then it takes about 6 to 8 weeks to do the development, another 2 weeks to implement, and then go live. But that's when you're like really streamlined. Organizations typically are okay with spending about even 4 to 6 months on a typical RPA implementation. But I just want to give you guys an overview of what are some of these steps to plan an RPA deployment, right? Now, we've spoken about what RPA is, what does it look like, how does it function, what are some of the tools, how do I assess processes, but then what are the major functional areas or the business areas in which RPA can really be applied? Is it something which can be applied pretty much everywhere? If not, how do we kind of identify that, right? So here is a quick map. This comes from Automation Anywhere, and pretty much what I've seen is, guys, 4 different areas. Finance and accounting, so all of these which you see here, record to report, procure to pay, order to cash, they are substreams of finance and accounting. Finance and accounting as a function is extremely rule-based. It's a very, very easy candidate for RPA. The second is supply chain. Third is information technology. And in IT, some of these use cases like IT service management, device monitoring, level 1 support, all of these things can be automated. And then of course, there's a huge use case in HR as well. Some of our customers with whom we've been working, who've been struck with this whole COVID-19 scenario, we had one of our US-based customers where the HR personnel couldn't come to office, and there was a huge shortage of personnel who could work. And that's where we implemented a bot which could very easily be sending out the pay slips and answer L1 queries for employees, so on and so forth. So it's a massive scope out there. Just think of it like this. Whatever you feel has a positive ROI in automating, and by ROI, it's a simple calculation of if I were to do it using a software, what would it cost versus how much time of an FT would I save? Whatever a human being does, which is rule-based, it can be automated. And that's a huge scope, right? Just think of it in terms of the easiest implementations. If you want to experiment with it, I'm sure all of us do some reporting of some kind, which involves picking data from standard repositories, putting them into Excel, drawing a pivot, creating a situation of sending that data out as emails or uploading it somewhere, doing some MIS reporting, so on and so forth. So this is a very, very easy use case where you can implement RPA. And of course, there are lots of other use cases which you see here on the screen. Organizations are, today at a space where they're implementing anywhere between 100 to 150 bots, people who have been in this journey, and it's a massive scope in terms of value streams where this can be done, right? Now, what we've also done at MindMap is we based on the requirements which we've been seeing from our customers, and I haven't spoken about my organization, I'm going to do that at the end. What we've done, this is an example of Heatmap, which we've created specifically for finance and accounting. Why finance and accounting? One, I come from that background, so I have a strong affinity towards it. And second, most of the organizations who evaluate implementing RPA find F&A as one of the easiest win areas. So if very quickly, I'm not going to go into a lot of details here, but very quickly, if we segregate F&A into two parts, transactional F&A and specialist roles, you basically have so many functions: procure to pay, order to cash, record to report, financial planning and analysis, treasury, taxation, legal, audit, etc. Right? So basically, guys, in whatever limited time I have with you, I want to show you, if you want to plan your RPA implementation, this is what you got to do. So pick up your area of work. Let's say F&A is the broad area where you want to do stuff. You break down your processes into value streams and pillars of activity. So these are pillars of activities. And within them, you have 4 different ways of classifying things. Things which have a complete or a full automation potential, and on a scale going down, things which have low or very low or no automation potential. And then you just list down the various activities and you color code them. So for example, I'm going to just take one example here for procure to pay, which is essentially the cycle of, when an organization works with vendors, vendors send invoices, you got to process those invoices and release payments. You'd be surprised to know that organizations actually spend a lot of time. They have this team called the accounts payable team, which works with it, between 3 to 25 people in various organizations who do this kind of work. And for example, receiving an invoice has low automation potential, but things like scanning and indexing and the actual invoice processing, picking up a data from an invoice, validating it, putting it into an ERP system, then running something which is called a 3-way match or a 2-way match, which verifies the data of the invoice with the purchase order and other documents, making sure it's good to go. And then this whole thing actually takes a lot of manual time. It can be completely automated in something called a touchless accounts payable process. And then, of course, there's approvals, which you do not want to automate because it's a huge risk concern there, and so on and so forth, right? And the ones which I'm marking with a star here are some of the easiest and the quickest use cases which we are seeing in the industry right now. So this is an example of the heat map of finance and accounting, which we are seeing in the industry. And similar heat maps can be created for any value stream and any function. And typically, this is what I advise all of you guys to do in terms of evaluating processes. This is the first place to start. Once you've kind of created this, then is when you move back to this metric of evaluating, for each process, is it manual, is it rule-based, so on and so forth. And there are various frameworks and things, and I can kind of help you with some of them if you're interested, and if you write to me, and I can give you some of these which will help you identifying. So that's basically how you identify stuff. Then what's really important is for you to create a very good business case. Now this is a real business case for one of our customers. For this customer, they used to process about 36,000 invoices manually in a year. They had a few employees doing it. Their cost was about $600,000 an annum, and hence they're approximately, they were spending anywhere between $12 to $15 for every invoice they processed. We were able to automate that entire thing in a period of 3 months, where the cost per invoice reduced from $14, and sometimes it was $17 for some invoice types, to about $4.20. So that's a massive ROI delivered in 3 months. And these guys ended up saving about $1.5 million over a period of 3 years. So huge, huge, huge use case. The way we did it was we put an invoice data extraction bot, a processing bot, an analytics bot, 3 bots, and we were able to do this whole thing. It did the job. So this is an example, guys, of creating a business case. So if you want to implement RPA, people, especially now, are going to ask you, hey, what is it going to cost? I don't have any budget. So your pitch is going to be that I'm not asking for money, I'm giving you money. If you implement this, this is what you're going to save over a period of time. And you got to really be able to prove your worth on that. So I just want to say that RPA is kind of a massive opportunity right now. Julian already mentioned that RPA is officially, for the second year in a row, the fastest growing software or technology in the enterprise software sector. And so since it's so massively growing, it's the right time for you to kind of pick it up and bring about change with it. Guys, I know some of you were contemplating how do I get started. UiPath and Automation Anywhere are the two tools. You can download their community editions free of cost. Go online, go to their academies. You have free courses to get started. You have examples, data sets. And of course, I'm going to leave you with my credentials. You can reach out to me in terms of doing that. But it's a huge, massive opportunity. There's a reason why it's a buzzword. The reason is it really works. It saves you a lot of money and does a lot of value add, right? So let me quickly spend about 5 minutes. I wanted to keep this for the end in terms of who we are and what we do. So we kind of specialize in digital transformation. We feel that digital transformation is more art than science, and we've created these frameworks and different accelerators which commoditizes transformation. And we've got pre-built use cases in F&A, ITSM, supply chain, and HR. We have more than 50 enterprise customers. We've done more than 200 RPA and AI use case-based implementations. We also have official partnerships with 7 of the vendors. This is just some of the guys who we've been working with in almost all different industry verticals: healthcare, pharma, manufacturing, BFSI, IT, ITS, so on and so forth. And guys, for all of you who want to get started, or if you want help for your enterprises, for your organizations, please feel free to reach out. This is a quick snapshot of the different things we do. We do help you with assessment and advisory, bot development. And Julian, as Julian mentioned, we have the dream of bringing sustainable skilling for digital skills to the whole planet. And we do a lot of work in training, certification, and capability transfers. We also work with organizations who say that, we want to keep the whole consulting and implementation capability with ourselves. So we help them in doing the whole knowledge transfer and helping them get started, build their own COEs. And then we also have staff augmentation, bot maintenance, so on and so forth. And yeah, finally, the whole MindMap Consulting family is not just about digital transformation and RPA, but we also do a lot of work in capability development, and we help organizations in hiring the right talent as well. And I think that is where I kind of quickly move into the Q&A. I had about, say, 30 odd minutes to do the whole presentation, and I think I've eaten up into that time. And guys, I know some of you might have some questions. Please, this is the time. Feel free. A couple of things here. This QR code is a link to this form. In case you have questions at a later point of time, or if you want to request a copy of this material, fill this out. I'm going to send it to you. Here's my email address. This is my LinkedIn handle. I'm really good in my responses. I think Julian is going to bet for that. On LinkedIn, yeah, I'm really active there. So guys, my whole objective of doing this webinar was, we're in really challenging times now, where individuals as well as businesses are fighting to A, stay relevant, and B, figure out how can they really transform their way of doing things. And I feel, and I've seen this happening, that RPA really works. And if you guys also feel the same, I just wanted to share some of these stories with you guys and help you kind of get started. Now, here is where I want to keep this crisp. I'm going to take a pause, and whoever has a question, please feel free to ask. Now we can kind of make it more interactive. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Saurav. It was quite informative and, RPA coming to alive, it seemed. So that's pretty good. And yeah, open to questions. Please, anyone have any questions, please unmute and ask.
Hello, Saurabh. This is Vamshi.
Hey,
The
Vamshi, hi.
presentation was really superb. My question is, in the software, the tools ranking, usually when we go with the Google Trends in comparison, the UiPath will be on the top in the top tool and in using tool. But in the list which was shown, the UiPath is standing in the second. The Automation Anywhere and the Blue Prism was standing in the first position. But
That's right. Yeah.
yeah, in the Google Trends, it was showing in the worldwide this UiPath tool is being the mostly used tool in the so.
Right. So, so good question, Vamshi. Typically there are various algorithms and methodologies which are used to rank tools. So here I shared a report by this analyst firm called HFS, and there are more analyst firms like Gartner, Everest Group, and all of them have their opinions. And when you look at Google Trends, I think they have their own algorithm of doing it. Now, in terms of which tool is the one which has had the most number of implementations, UiPath scores number one. In terms of what is the tool which has basically the highest turnover, the highest valuation, the highest top line, again, UiPath scores number one. But what we have seen, so for your information, Blue Prism actually was one of the first RPA tools to come out there. They're like really old. But UiPath has done really well. It's also my personal favorite. But Automation Anywhere is catching up really fast. And there are scenarios right now where organizations literally find it very difficult to choose between both of these. If somebody wants to build skills, I would recommend that they have skills on both these tools. They are kind of used fairly interchangeably right now. But yes, I agree with you. UiPath kind of has an edge right now. And depending on which analyst report you're referring to, you may see a little bit of movement, but the top three are going to remain one of these three. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Saurabh.
Yes,
this is Sai. Sorry.
Yeah, great, Sai.
Oh, thank you. So, hi, Saurabh. This is Sai.
Hey, Sai.
So my question is like, so you were working on both Automation Anywhere and UiPath?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is the main difference between these two? Like, I saw like Automation Anywhere. Like we worked on UiPath. Like I saw that it's completely a tool based, like just drag and drop. There is no much scripting or coding there. Only we will write some cases when we are writing, for example, selectors or something. So how about Automation Anywhere? Is it more script based?
It's kind of very similar, Sai, in terms of usability and user. So there's a big difference in the UI, right? While UiPath focuses more on the workflows as the first layer of creation of your automation scenario, Automation Anywhere is slightly different. However, in terms of people ranking them on technical capability and user friendliness, they kind of rank pretty much neck to neck. There is very little difference. One of the things which was really different between the two was on the AI capability side of the house. So Automation Anywhere had this product called IQBot, where IQBot has pre-built machine learning and AI algorithms in it, which was kind of not to that level in UiPath, but UiPath also is shaping up with a new product release right now. But in terms of differences, if your question is more in terms of how do I choose, apart from what rates they offer you and what support ecosystem you have, there's really not much beyond that. And their pricing is also kind of pretty much neck to neck. So there's not much to choose from between the two of them specifically.
Oh, thank you. I have one more question. So regarding UiPath, like we just saw one attended bot, like it is emailing out PDF document. So can we do that in completely in a background, like for
Absolutely,
example,
yeah.
can we do that?
Absolutely. So brilliant question, Sai. So you can do so UiPath has a UiPath orchestrator, and there is a various mechanism by which you can auto trigger bots. What the UiPath bot does basically is, now imagine you have implemented this on a virtual machine, right? The orchestrator will automatically trigger this bot on a separate instance which will be created for the bot, and it's going to do everything in the background. So you don't need to know about it. How will you monitor what's going on? You can go into the orchestrator console and see what's happening, or you can trigger the bots to send you certain reports, and you can look at the logs and all that stuff. But in terms of back-end automation capabilities, whatever you do on the front end, if you architect it right, you can kind of do it in the backend as well.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you, sir.
That being said, they also have API-based integration capabilities with lots and lots of tools, where of course you can do the whole thing just using an API.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. So I have one more thing. Like, so how about like how frequent people are using this automation tools for web application or mobile testing? So instead of like CRM testing, like SAP, Salesforce, and everything. So how frequently people like are testing for web application testing?
So testing is not really a very popular use case, Sai, right now for RPA, and the reason is cost.
Yeah,
you can kind of get that testing done using some other tools and at a much lower cost probably. In cases where organizations have licenses lying around which they've purchased and they're not using it for anything else, they are using it. But in my experience, that's not really one of the best use cases of RPA.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Saurabh. Yeah, that's a great presentation.
Hey, I also have one question from Uday in the Q&A. Uday asks, which tool is more capable in AI integration? Yes, so I kind of already said that Automation Anywhere's IQ bot, I feel, has better AI capabilities. But with the new product launch for UiPath, that might just change. But as of now, my personal view is Automation Anywhere's IQ bot is more capable. Sorry, I kind of cut somebody off. Somebody had a question.
Yes, Saurabh. So this is Madhu. Saurabh, excellent presentation. One question: can RPA be used for load testing? Like if an application we want to mimic 100,000 users using the application at the same time, how the load is impacting it? Can
Absolutely,
we that? Yeah.
Definitely. So here it's a very simple scenario, Madhu, where you gotta trigger those many instances of the application using the RPA bot. You can absolutely do that. That's very easy to do for RPA.
Excellent. So how many companies do you currently support? How big is your implementation team or support team?
So we kind of have at the whole MindMap consulting family level, Madhu, we have about 200 people. And we work with more than 50 enterprise customers currently. In terms of the RPA team, we have about, I think, 75 to 80 people, which is a team of developers, business analysts, solution architects, and then process experts. So, what we've done differently is one of the reasons why RPA implementations kind of used to fail a lot and still fail is the lack of attention to the process expertise elements, right? For example, if you're doing something in F&A, you need somebody who understands the exceptions in the accounting world clearly. So we have a bunch of certified functional experts who are techno-functional experts. So for example, we have CPAs and chartered accountants who are moving into RPA. We have HR specialists who also have the technology flair and all that stuff. But to answer your question, we've done more than about 200 bots so far in our journey, about 50 enterprise customers, 200 people, and 75 people on the technical side.
Okay, so you're based in India and you're having customers in US?
Yeah, so we're based in India. Customers, we have customers in US, in Philippines, in South Africa, in Egypt. We do a lot of work in the Middle East also. But yeah, we do have a good number of customers in North America as well.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Good luck.
Thanks, Madhu.
Hi, Saurav, Vaishnavi here.
Hey, Vaishnavi.
I have just, out of curiosity, I have just one question that in India, in our society, that we have small enterprises that are having invoice and they need to process it for GST and all. Can we
Yeah.
automate that process with minimal budget or like something? Is it a good use case of RPA bot?
So, Vaishnavi, let me tell you something. First of all, good question. And I also work with the MSME sector. I work alongside the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. And we actually are working on this very specific use case that for the small and medium practitioners and small and medium businesses, can we really use RPA in some of those things? So the answer is not really if you want to go ahead with these tools like UiPath Automation anywhere. Because in India, for somebody, for the kind of example you gave of GST return filing or all of that, you can find a resource with a salary of 4 or 5 lakh per annum who can do it for you. Now, if you create creating a bot has two different costs. You have the license cost, which is an annual cost, then you have the implementation cost, right? And then you need somebody to constantly tweak your bot. Since you spoke about GST is something which keeps on changing, the whole returns and the formats and all that stuff. So all of those costs typically add up to about $10,000 to $15,000 for a small implementation if you work with some of these tools. However, we also do work with some of the new tools which are really nice and innovative. For example, there's this tool called IntelliBot. They have better licensing cost, and you can do implementations with them at a much lower cost. So we are, as I speak now, we're actually kind of building some use cases for small and medium businesses. In terms of can it be done? Absolutely yes, but there is a need to create some interesting financial models. So we're also looking at creating RPA as a service where we have a shared services center of excellence where I can create one bot to look at multiple clients and all of that. In terms of feasibility and use case, Vaishnavi, yes, it can absolutely be done, but we need to be innovative in the way we structure the whole engagement.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's really very informative. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Hi, Saurav.
Hi.
Yeah, that was a very good presentation actually. So as I said, so in innovation point of view, like what do you the best innovative bot you did like in your for your clients? So what are the best new technologies you want to implement in the RPA?
Yeah, so one of the things which we did, which was kind of innovative, this was one of our clients in Egypt, and they were working with a lot of IoT devices. So we were able to build a bot which could create a command center by pooling in information from various IoT devices. And then based on their statuses, it could send triggers to, trigger certain processes of manufacturing machines on or off. And that is where it was going a little bit beyond the traditional realm of just software-based automation. That was one of the interesting ones. But in terms of innovative use cases, my dear friend, the sky is kind of the limit. You just need to be able to imagine it. And the way I see things today, whatever you can imagine, I think technology can do. If there is something you can imagine, I'm sure you can find some technology to fit your bill. And when you want to do something with RPA, just think of how do I kind of create interesting use cases around it. One of the things which I did, for our marketing team was kind of trying to find out that, hey, who are the right stakeholders to connect to? Then we built a bot in less than 10 minutes, which could go on LinkedIn, put in a certain designation and scrape data page after page after page to give me an Excel file of 500 names of stakeholders and the designations and where are they based, so on and so forth, with their profile links and all that stuff. So you can do pretty much whatever you can imagine.
Okay, yeah. So my next question is, so like from far now we are talking about advantages, everything. So what are the disadvantages, some kind of backdrops of RPA, like from your experience point of view? So where did you thought anything like we can't do this from with RPA kind of like situations?
Good question again. The biggest disadvantage is that it can break. And if it breaks, now imagine that you've put an automated solution to do something like invoice processing. Middle of the night, it breaks and you're not even aware about it. And then things stop and then you don't know how to fix it. So that's the biggest problem. Most of the organizations, there are essentially two big problems, right? Three big problems which CIOs face today when they work with RPA. The first problem is that it takes a lot of time to implement. Even though RPA promises 10 weeks and all that stuff, it's not possible to do unless you structure the implementation right. That's problem number one. Problem number two is scalability. If you do a little bit of research, you will find that CIOs feel RPA is not scalable. And that's because when you design RPA, that's where you've not taken the modularity aspect of thing into the picture and you've kind of built in silos. So then there is a huge change management and a COE setup which needs to be done if you want to do RPA right. And the third problem is people do not create the right process design document, right? If you remember, I spoke about creating a level 3 keystroke level process design document, which has to be fairly detailed to capture your exceptions. One exception somewhere, you don't process it, you don't come to know about it, it becomes a mess. So it's very easy to break if you don't have the right governance structure set up. For example, just think of it like this, right? If you're working with one of your employees and if something goes wrong, you can just go to him and talk and say, hey, you know what, you skipped this. You can't do that with a bot. With a bot, you'll have to first painstakingly find out what went wrong. So making sure you have the right reporting, the right governance and all that stuff, it's really important to set that up nicely, else it's easy to break.
So like you're saying, so for designing a bot, we need architect, a very good architect, and a good developer. Like we need a very big
all
team.
The exceptions, that's really important. You need to capture all the exceptions well.
Yeah, testing team kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And the documentation has to be solid, right? So if tomorrow, if you're of the team and somebody else needs to do something, they need to know the whole thing really well. So you need to spend, so process design documents can run into 400 to 500 pages, and people find it cumbersome to create all that stuff, but it's really important to get that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, sir. That's very good.
Welcome.
Hi, Saurabh. I'm Deepa.
Hi, Deepa.
It was a very nice presentation. Thank you for that.
Most
I have
welcome,
a
Deepa.
different question. Is there any open source RPA tool?
Okay, so there isn't really an open source RPA tool which is really that capable as any of the RPA tools for enterprise usage. However, every single RPA tool has a community edition, which you can use for testing purposes and for I think there is some end user license agreement where you can use it for small organizations or something like that to some extent. But no, there is no real open source RPA tool which falls into the defined category of an RPA tool. There's nothing out there which has the potential to do whatever we spoke about. It's all license based.
Thank you.
Okay. Every time I unmuted, somebody had a question. So it was so good that, I did not have to ask every time. Just go ahead and ask your question. So everybody, yeah, Chandu, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so the last question actually. So,
Sure, Chandu.
Yeah, you are dealing with the bots, right? Developing the bots. So how your team like start developing the bots? So what the process you follow? So like what is the best process to build a bot actually? You told in presentation, so I want to be very make sure about that thing.
Yeah, sure. So Chandu,
Can we be,
first
sorry. Can be more specific about that?
Sure. So, the first thing is that the process selection has to be right. You have to select a process where it's mostly rule based, and if you do it, you have positive ROI. Then you have to create the process design document. Once you've created the process design document, you have to break down your entire project into 4 or 5 mini projects. For each mini project, typically you use Agile as a way to develop and implement. You create your entire structure, you implement a mini project, test it out in the real environment, and then you move on with it. From an implementation methodology perspective, it's kind of fairly typical and straightforward and similar to any of the other IT implementation methodologies. There's nothing different. Again, you have to really be careful about exception handling and error handling, right? What happens in case the bot finds an error? What happens in case there's an exception and the bot doesn't know what to do with it? So there are some of these small things which needs to be taken care of. Apart from that, it's pretty much similar to how any IT implementation would go.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Yes, Saurav, as you said that you can use RPA to any imagination. So I was just thinking that if a bot could also serve lunch and make the kids more understanding that you have to leave the computer and now go and do some productive creative work. When you get that bot done, please do let me know for sure.
Well, I do hope that some things are always controlled by humans, Julian.
So, yeah, no, absolutely amazing presentation, Saurav. And I mean, it was really an honor to have you and your, I mean, your positivity and your liveliness definitely added to the presentation that you had to share. So thank you so much for doing this for us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, our attendees who, being so patient, had continued staying with us and asking, commenting, and thank you for all the other attendees who have joined on the social media. And so we are done for today, but we will be back again tomorrow with another topic, which is emotional transformation, the power of your emotions, and how to put that power to work for you every day. It is a struggle of different sorts of emotions these days, so it would be a very powerful and positive session tomorrow, 12 p.m. EST. We are excited about that. And again, on Friday, we will be having our Let Us Talk It Youth webinar series with Indian values and American